The champion is basically, and I think JoeCat put it the best, we heard you like fighter, so we put more fighter in your fighter. So I'm extremely qualified to talk about this class, because it's basically like you become Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can flex the hardest, and it is the easiest archetype out of any class, ever. If you're a new player, I heavily recommend this. So a fighter is a pretty efficient character in combat, because, who guessed it, they're called fighters. Since almost all of their abilities are often just helping you be good at fighting. It's in the name, you know. There are certainly subclasses that you can take that can help a fighter outside of combat and in roleplay situations and various other stuff, but the champion is basically only for killing shit and fighting and jumping around and being cool and being an action hero movie star. It's badass and fun. The combat features are neat. Before you start considering this build, you'll probably really want to be good at a weapon or two. This is one of those archetypes that give you nothing in terms of roleplay and just let you hit things harder and live longer. Now you can still go with a ranged fighter and all that jazz, but this gives you nothing else except better ways to hit and be hit. So yeah, if you're multi-classing into a fighter from another class, it's going to be a bit more difficult, I would imagine. Like a champion fighter wizard does not sound amazing in comparison to starting with fighter. And if you plan on multi-classing as a fighter, do fighter first, man. You get every proficiency in the frickin' book. Basically, heavy armor, medium armor, light armor, simple weapons, martial weapons, and even shields. You get a lot, so it's worth it. So when you choose this archetype at level 3, you get improved critical, the most simple yet coolest ability in the game. Your weapon attacks crit on a roll of a 19 or a 20 on the d20, which is super freaking cool. And this doesn't have any specific conditions, like with Hexblade's Curse, for instance. Go and watch the Hexblade video over there. So Hexblade's Curse is you target one specific creature and then you roll 19 or 20 and that crits for you then. Champion fighters have this permanently as long as they're hitting something with a weapon, which, because you're a fighter, you're hitting something with a weapon. This build is amazing with something like a greatsword or a maul, because they can deal 2d6 damage, where on a crit that will double to 4d6, so you're going to have an extremely reliable damage output, other than like a 2d12, which is much more random. You could get 2 3s and just be like, oh, well, I guess that's just like 10 damage then, sure. This ability, paired up with the multitude of extra attacks that a fighter will get along the road, means you're going to be critting about half the time, every turn. Like, yeah. Fighter subclasses get a lot of features, which is neat, because the fighters get 5, sometimes even 6, depending on what archetype you choose. Makes the classes much more customizable, in my opinion. It's also the best for a little dip due to second wind and action surge and stuff coming in play. The next one comes at level 7, which is somewhat of a wait, but you'll get there, which for champions is a remarkable athlete. Any strength, dexterity or constitution check that you make that you're not proficient with, you can add half of your proficiency bonus to. Round it up. This is kind of like a jack of all trades bard. This means that, you know, make a dexterity check and you're like, I don't do those much, I'm not proficient with thieves tools. Oh, okay, I guess I'm now half proficient with them, which is really weird, and it's not exactly an athlete sort of thing, but it's very versatile, and this is why I recommend being very physical in your fighting stuff. Get a bit of strength, dexterity, and con, just to round it all out. Also, found out just recently that this actually applies to initiative as well. So with a decent dexterity, because you can't be proficient in initiative, so you can add like a plus 1, 2, or 3 to your initiative later down the line, which is funny as hell. Building good dexterity with this means that you might be going first. There's not too many things that buff your initiative in D&D 5e, which is kind of disappointing, except if you go for a max charisma, max dexterity, swashbuckler rogue, and then take this as well, and you have a plus 13 to your initiative, and then you take the alert feat, and then you have it plus 18 to your initiative. And there's magic items that can do that as well. But like, there aren't enough things, if you know what I mean. Like, you need to get very specific archetypes and builds to make that work. Remarkable Athlete also gives you a neat extra other ability, where you get an additional running long jump distance equal to your strength score. If you have a decent strength score, you could probably yeet 30 to 40 feet in a single jump, which is sick. Normally, you don't jump too much, but it can be useful when there's like a massive 30-foot corridor with pit spikes, and the DM's like, okay, be creative, and you're like, no, and you just grab your halfling mate and just jump over. they're like, oh, you only have to wait 3 more levels until you get another fighter feature, which is neat. This feature is additional fighting style. You get another fighting style. You can't choose the same one again, obviously, but this is pretty neat if you want to be a specialist in something else. If you went for great weapon fighting and now you're realizing that your AC is lagging behind the 22 AC monk with braces of defense, then go ahead and invest in some defense. Get protection if you feel like your allies keep going down a little bit and you want to help them out a little bit with your shield. Or maybe even snag yourself dueling to be the best with a longsword that they ever did see. It's nothing new or particularly interesting, but it's useful as heck. This time the wait is until 15th level, where you'll be getting superior critical. This is kind of like your 3rd level ability, but even better, where you crit on an 18, 19, or 20 on your d20 roll. My lord. So, and now that you have your 2nd extra attack, you're doing 3 attacks around with a 15% chance to crit on each one. That's a 45% chance that goes up to 60 at 20th level. Then you have Action Surge, and probably like a bonus action attack at some point. Now, you get the last fighter's subclass ability at 18, which is pretty neat. They tend to be really powerful, like a gunslinger can crit on 19s and 20s on their d20 rolls with a firearm, which is amazing because critting gets their grit points back. An Eldritch Knight can cast a spell and then make an attack. And a Samurai basically gets a free turn when they drop to 0 hit points just before they go down. So what is the 18th level champion ability? As long as you aren't on 0 hit points, you heal at the start of every single one of your turns 5 plus your constitution modifier in health. Like an average of 6 to 10 hit points a turn, even outside of combat. It only goes up to half your max HP, but Jesus Christ, if you're going on like a dungeon grind at 18th level or something, you're on half health permanently, nothing less, no hit dice needed. And if you have decent constitution, at this point you should have about 200 and something health. So you'll permanently be on 100 and something. You become Wolverine. You just become Wolverine. This is why I definitely invest in Constitution, even if you're playing like a fighter with a bow on this, because then you live forever. A good Constitution is probably amazing for if you're running in with a big old weapon and hitting things up front, which is why I do that for this sort of build. This archetype is amazing late game. So if you're in a campaign that goes all the way to level 20, my god, you shall be unstoppable. Except the dreaded status condition can come and fuck you in the arsehole. Cheers for watching my epic video. It's your cool guy, Jake Anslow. Like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell, and yeah, do that. Look at this cool ass outro thingy card. Look at this. Ain't Laura amazing? See, I'm getting good at this. I keep like pointing at things and I'm like, oh, go check out that video. Whoa, whoa, whoa.